Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Francisco.
Good morning. Today we are meeting, inshallah, this session, and we're also going to be meeting fourth session. Okay. For the time being, I want to continue. I want to today, according to our weekly plan, we are going to work on. Um, uh, Today we're going to be working on complements. Okay, I have explained to you guys in class direct object. However, I will continue to explain the indirect object today. Okay, just waiting for everyone to join. All right, so today I would like to start by, first of all, good morning, and I hope that you guys have a fabulous day ahead of you. Today I would like to start with explaining to you guys the chapter 4 in grammar. We started some of it in class. However, today I will continue explaining the rest of it. Okay, so we've discussed that we have term names. Of course, you guys probably forgot what we did so far. So I'm gonna go over it from the beginning. Okay, this is chapter 4 in our grammar textbook. So I would kindly appreciate if you would have your grammar textbooks ready with you. If you guys look at on chapter 4, which starts on page number, I'll tell you right now. It starts on page 119. Okay, it starts on page 119. I want you to start with me on page 120, however. Okay, if you guys look on page 120, we have this chapter focuses on what we call complements. All right, and when we discuss complements, we're discussing four of them. Okay, I said one of them is a direct object. Okay, and then the next one would be an indirect object. We also
Miss, do
have,
we get our notebook and take notes?
if you want to, baby, you can take notes with me. I think we already wrote these in our notebooks for those that were in class. We already wrote this. This is just a recap to remind you that we have four types of complements, and we wrote them before. Okay, we wrote them before, and we discussed that we have direct object, indirect object. We also have what we call a predicate, nominative, and we also have the fourth type, which is a predicate adjective. All right, and these four, and why did I separate them? Is because we could find them with different types of verbs. Because remember, at the end of the day, a complement is a word that completes the meaning of a verb. Okay, so complements are words that complete the meaning of a verb. Okay, so we have to look at the verb. The kind of verb that we have is very important. Direct objects and indirect objects in class, we said that they must come. Okay, you will not be able to have a you will not be able to have a direct object and or an indirect object without having a action verb. Okay, so you must have an action verb first. Okay, so this is what we have to agree on. All right, so again, in order for you to answer correctly on a quiz or on the exam or for your own knowledge, you must first look at the verb. Looking at the verb is going to help you identify what kind of complement you could possibly have in a sentence. If you look at your verb, for example, and you find it that it's an action verb, okay, so again, here, action verb. If you have an action verb, then you're dealing most likely with a direct object or an indirect object. If, however, you have a linking verb, then you are most likely going to deal with a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. Okay? So, again, these complements come with a linking verb. And if you guys remember the difference between an action verb and a linking verb, an action verb is something that we could do mentally, or physically. Okay, like when we talk, when we cook, when we sleep, when we dream, when we think. All these are action verbs that are either mental or physical. However, linking verbs, we said to be careful of the words that have to deal with the five senses, like for example, taste, smell. Okay, a predicate nominative, however, we need to understand that it's always a noun or a pronoun. Okay, and we need to understand that a predicate adjective, obviously from the word adjective, we can tell that it's a adjective. All right, my direct object and indirect object, there are some rules that have to deal with them. Okay, my do and io, I'm going to be always calling the direct object a do, just as abbreviation. And my indirect object, I will refer to it as my io, also abbreviation. Okay, so just to know, all right, we're gonna call this one the PN and PA. For the direct object and indirect object, there are some rules that we need to follow. My DO and IO cannot be found in a prepositional phrase. And if you guys don't remember prepositional phrases, there are words that tell you the position, like on, under, of, about. Okay? All these are prepositional phrases that we should always avoid because we cannot find our direct object those types of in those prepositional phrases. So try to avoid them because whenever we see them, we should mentally cross them out. All right, cross them out because we're not going to find the our direct object or indirect object in them. So avoid. Okay, this is some of the rules. We need to avoid prepositional phrases. All right. So whenever you see a prepositional phrase, try to ignore it. All right. The next thing that we need to know that dos and ios are always nouns or pronouns. If you find yourself circling a direct object that is an adjective, you're doing something wrong. Okay. So your direct object or indirect object must always be either a adjective or a noun or a pronoun. This is just the rule. Okay, it cannot be something else. All right, so whenever you're dealing with the do and io, you either have a noun or a pronoun. This is the part of speech for them. Okay, so now just as a reminder, a direct object is it's the receiver of the verb. Okay, and if you guys remember when we discussed transitive and intransitive verbs, we said a transitive verb has a receiver. All right, that means your subject goes to the verb and the verb goes to a receiver. Like for example, if I say ورد greeted Zaina. All right. So here, what is my subject? Try to, this is the subject. It has nothing to do with the sentence. If you look at the verb greeted, you'll find that it's an action verb. Whenever you see that you have an action verb, then you're most likely dealing with a direct object or an indirect object. Another rule that I want you to know that you cannot have an IO without a DO. You cannot have an IO without a DO. Okay, so if you find a sentence with an IO without a DO, it's wrong. Okay, but you can, however, have a DO without an IO. All right. So here, if my verb is an action verb, okay, so I have an action verb here, which is greeted. Okay. Question is, who did what greet? Of course, here your answer would be Zena. Now, Zena is my direct object. And if you guys remember back to chapter 3, we would say that greeted is a transitive verb because it has a receiver, which is Zena, which is your object, your direct object. Okay? So in this sentence, you have a DO of a direct object, which is Zena. However, you do not have an IO. An IO does not exist in this sentence. Okay? We can also have another sentence the book gives you. And we did answer, I think, exercise 1 in class. All right, we did. All right, now today I want to quickly go into the indirect objects. Now we're going to discuss indirect objects because this is what we have to do today. All right, now an indirect object also has to appear with an action verb. So whenever you have an action verb, this is when you can see that you have a indirect object. Now, an indirect object cannot show up on its own. It must be with a direct object. You cannot have an IO without a DO. It doesn't appear that way. It doesn't show up in a sentence by itself. Okay? So if we look at the sentence, for example, that they provided in the book, the waiter gave her the bill. The waiter, all right, the waiter gave her the bill. Now, you have to ask yourself, first of all, we said we agreed that we're going to look for the verb first, okay, because it will help you determine if you have a DOIO or a PNPA. Now, if you look at the verb in the sentence, it's the verb gave. Now, gave is an action verb, okay? Whenever you see that you have an action verb, you know that you're dealing with a DO or IO, okay? So you have an action verb of gave. Now, you have to ask yourself, your subject is waiter. What did the waiter give? Okay, he didn't give her. Okay, you try to picture
Give the bill.
he gave the bill. Good job. Okay, so you have to kind of try to picture the situation in your head. What is the waiter giving? He's giving the bill. All right, he's holding the bill in his hand and he's giving it. All right, so here your direct object is the word bill. And remember not to include the, because the is an article, and articles are considered adjectives. And remember, we agreed that my direct object and my indirect object cannot be a adjective. It has to be a noun or pronoun. All right, so here you would put that your DO or your direct object would be the word bill. Okay, now the question is, who did he give the bill to? All right, who did he give the bill to? For who? For her. Okay, so indirect object here would be her. Now, her is a pronoun, which is good because, again, if you guys remember the other slide that I wrote, that if you guys look previously here, we'll see that my direct object could be a noun or a pronoun, and my indirect object could be a noun or pronoun. So I'm good. Okay, I'm actually I'm fine. Okay, because it works out well. All right, that my indirect object is a pronoun and my direct object is a noun. Here you have answered the question. Okay, you've looked at your verb, you've determined that it's an action verb, you've looked at your direct object and your indirect object, you're set. Okay, the next sentence says Pam left the waiter a tip. Left the waiter a tip. Now here, again, we have to look at the verb first. Do I have an action verb? Yes, I do. My action verb here is left. Okay, left is an action verb. It's something physical that we do. All right, like when you leave. Okay, now you have to ask yourself, Pam left what? She didn't leave the waiter. Okay, she didn't leave him. No, she left the tip. Okay, so here my direct object or my DO, what did Pam leave? She left the tip. So tip is my direct object. It's a noun. So I'm good. All right, I'm doing well. For who did she leave the tip? Who did she leave the tip for? She left it for the waiter. Good job. Exactly. For the waiter. Good job. Okay. So again, waiter here is a noun. So I am doing well. All right, noun because it's a person. It's a common noun. All right. So again, I answered the question correctly. All right. So I'm doing fine. Did she tip him $5? Did she tip him $5? This is your next sentence. Now here you have an action verb again. But remember, what did I tell you guys before about interrogative sentences? That they start with a helping verb, if you guys remember. So be very careful that you might have a verb phrase. So if I tell you to underline the verb or the action verb in the sentence, you would say did tip, not just tip. Okay, so it's did tip. All right, don't forget that you have a helping verb interrupted by the subject because it's a interrogative sentence, and that usually happens in interrogative sentence. Did she tip him $5? Did tip. Tip, the pronoun here, what did she tip?
$5.
Good. All right. So she tipped the $5. So the DO here is the dollars. And for who did she tip the $5? For him.
Him.
Good. So my IO is him. Good job. All right. And this is how you find your indirect object and my direct object. All right. Another one that I could give you is I sent mom a letter. This is also an easy one. Sent is my action verb. What did you send? The letter. For who? For mom. Direct object, indirect object. So my action verb again would be sent. Okay. For who did you? What did you send? My do would be the letter. Okay, because you sent the letter. And for whom
With
did you
who
send the
to
letter?
mom?
For mom. Okay, it'll be for mom. So your IO would be mom. Okay, and that would be how to answer these things. Now, another thing that they tell you here or they show you is how to avoid a prepositional phrase. The ship's captain gave orders to the crew. This one is a good sentence. The ship's captain gave orders to the crew. Now, remember here, the ship's I forgot to put the subject, which is the captain. All right. So the subject here is the captain. Remember, it's not the ships because ships is a possessive noun. It shows ownership. It shows that the ship belongs to the captain. Okay. So please do not say that the ship is the subject. Anything with apostrophe s cannot be a subject. It just shows ownership. All right. Now here, the captain is the subject of my sentence. Do I have an action verb? Yes, I do, which is the verb gave. Now, what did the captain give? He gave orders. Okay, so I gave what? I gave instructions. Okay, the captain gave what? What did he give? He gave the orders. So the orders are my direct objects. Now, some of you guys on the test, you would say, oh yes, he gave the orders to who? To the crew. So you would put that your IO is crew, and that would be totally wrong. Okay, that would be wrong. Why? Because if you look, you would see that the word crew is an object of preposition that belongs to the prepositional phrase to the crew. Okay, so again here in this sentence, this would be totally incorrect. You would say that there's none. Okay, none in the sentence. All right, we do not have an IO in the sentence. Okay, he gave the orders to the crew. Yes, it says to the crew, but is the word crew an indirect object? No, it's not. It's an object of preposition. So in this case, if you are going to answer a question of IO, you would say that this sentence does not have an indirect object. Okay, this is what you would say regarding the IO. Okay, so again, why is there no IO in the sentence? Because you have a prepositional phrase. To the crew is a prepositional phrase. And if you guys look at the rules that we stated in slide number 1, it says that DOs and IOs cannot be in a prepositional phrase. All right, Vinny made some lasagna for us. So Vinny made some, and lasagna is a type of pasta. All right, spelled like this, lasagna. For us, there's no Y in it, but usually at the end there's a little curve on top of it. It's Spanish, maybe a little, maybe even Italian. I'm not sure, but usually the N is pronounced with a little y in it, lasagna. Okay, so even though there's no Y, this is how you pronounce it. It's lasagna. Vinny made some lasagna for us. And here, again, you would see that you have an action verb, which is made. Okay, so again, your action verb is made. What did Vinny make? Of course, it's not some, because some here is an adjective describing the amount of lasagna. All right, so what did he made? He made some. Okay, he made some. He made the lasagna. So my direct object here would be the lasagna. And again, the indirect object, you would ask yourself, for who? For who did he make the lasagna? And you would say, us is the indirect object, and that would be totally, again, incorrect. Again, why? Because it's a prepositional phrase. Make sure always that your IO or DO are not in a prepositional phrase before you make the decision of circling them as DO or identifying them as DO or IOs. Okay, in this case, you would say that you do not have an IO. Again, none in the sentence. All right, we don't have any. Okay, we don't have any in the sentence. Again, why? Because for us is a prepositional phrase, and my direct object, indirect object cannot be in a prepositional phrase. All right. Vinny made us some lasagna. Now, this is a good sentence. Vinny made